Welcome to Forge and Anvil, where we hammer out hard conversations to sharpen ourselves for the cultural, political, and spiritual war that we are living in. My name is Connor. I am host of this podcast. I am a husband, a father, and a follower of Christ Jesus, just doing my best to represent him well wherever I go. Tonight, we're going to talk all about artificial intelligence. So I've definitely touched on the subject multiple times throughout the course of this podcast, but we're going to do a much more focused episode here. Specifically, I'm going to be talking with a return guest, one of my favorite guests, C.R. Wiley, about artificial intelligence, because he's been doing a whole bunch of work on that, more than most. In fact, I don't see very many Christians do a deep dive on artificial intelligence beyond just touching on the subject. So I'm really excited to get into the topic. But Chris, before we dive in, how about you go ahead and give an introduction for those who may not be familiar with your work?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Connor. Like you noted, I'm C.R. Wiley, and I pastor a church just outside Portland, Oregon, and I've written a number of things, a number of books, and I'm a senior editor at Touchstone Magazine, and I've been working on the subject of artificial intelligence for almost 2 years now, trying to think about it and think about my own sort of take on how to, as Christians, live with it.
Yeah, and I'm excited to get into that. So, I mean, I've been following you for a while. Obviously, you've been on the show several times at this point, but I've been really watching you as you kind of give little glimpses into some of your thought process. I know, if I understand correctly, you are writing a book on artificial intelligence.
Right.
Have you actually have you finished it? Have you sent it off to the editors or anything like that?
I'm putting the final touches on it. I sent off an earlier version, an earlier draft, and they asked me to make some changes. And I think that things that they suggested were great. So I went a little further than I think they intended me to go. I basically rewrote the whole book. But I'm hopeful that it'll be helpful.
Awesome. Well, I've been seeing some of the books that you've been reading as you're developing your thoughts on the process and everything like that. So it's been really interesting to get glimpses of where you're at with that. So, like I said, not very many Christians are doing a deep dive on artificial intelligence like you are. So I think that this conversation will be very beneficial to my audience. So this may sound like a simple question, but I think it's an important one. What, as you've done your research, how would you describe what exactly AI is?
Okay, well, it's simulates human intelligence. It's essentially the nature of it. The developments with artificial intelligence, because of the work of people like Jeffrey Hinton and Yoshua Bengio, really took a turn a little while back away from an approach to artificial intelligence that hadn't been very fruitful. And the new approach is one that's basically based on a neural network software that simulates the neural networks of the human brain. And through the training regime, they're able to, through a variety of techniques, strengthen certain connections, allow others to sort of kind of just basically just not fail to develop. And consequently, because of the vast amount of data that they are able to put into this software to work with, and the incredible computing power that we now have, the outcomes are just really startling in terms of what artificial intelligence is able to achieve. At the moment, we have something called narrow artificial intelligence, which is pretty much task specific. And with that, the results are still impressive, because just in a very short period of time, just about any task that artificial intelligence is given to perform, at least within sort of the virtual space, it's able to far exceed human performance in a pretty short time. But the kind of the holy grail is something that that's referred to as artificial general intelligence, where you have the ability to kind of have expertise in multiple domains. And when that happens, basically they say it's going to be a whole new world. The singularity will occur, as they say.
Mm. So, how would you describe the singularity? Because I think most people just think about sci-fi movies, but
Right, right.
what's your take?
Well, it's an analogy. It's drawing on um, a phenomenon that physicists refer to with regard to black holes and so forth, where information goes in, but we're not really sure what happens after that. And essentially, what we have is an event horizon that we can't see beyond, so we can't predict anything. We can make some educated guesses as to what might happen, but you just can't know. And so the singularity is something that it's a term that's used to describe when we arrive at that point, when artificial intelligence is so capable and so powerful that we're not really sure what happens next.
So this may be putting the cart before the horse a bit, but through all your research and just with the way AI has already been developing since you started,
Yeah.
the process of researching and writing your book, would you say that AI is? I mean, we're not called to be fearful, but would you say it's
Right.
scary to you, the developments?
Well, it's scary like any powerful tool or powerful device. So, nuclear weapons are scary.
Yeah.
So we can't pretend that things that are powerful and can do a lot of harm um, aren't scary. And I think sometimes there's a bravado with some Christians, particularly post-mill people, where they um, almost refuse to accept the possibility that something bad could happen, or something dangerous is, uh, you know, now on the scene that wasn't there before. There's a kind of, I don't know, kind of a
Mm.
Pollyannish post millennialism, I guess.
Mm.
Yeah. And I know what drives that. A lot of the people who feel this way or kind of think in these terms are kind of recovering pre-mill people who
Yeah.
used to like read the newspaper, and every time they saw something that was bad or terrible, they would cheer because they would say, well, we're that much closer to the return of Christ. And so,
Right.
they've kind of gone too far the other direction, in my opinion. They just, now they're like anything that is particularly in the realm of technological and sort of progress is something to cheer for. And I think there are a lot of great things about artificial intelligence. I think it's going to be really great if we manage to use it well.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, for me, I'm an artist. I know you are as well. I think for me, I was on a hiatus with this podcast for basically a full year, and there was a while there where I was debating even coming back because it felt like, well, I mean, am I going to do this thing and then AI is going to be so great that everyone just listen to AI podcasters, right after I start, and of course that hasn't necessarily materialized fully yet, and we've seen the snippets of the baby interviewing his dog and
Right,
things like that go viral.
right, right.
But when it comes to the arts, how do you think AI is going to ultimately land? When it comes to our human desire to create, versus the fact that AI can just do it faster, quicker. Sometimes it seems like maybe even more creatively than when we can as an individual.
Yeah, well, I think the effect is going to be felt most um, significantly or profoundly at kind of the entry level. So, for example, when you have a person that's trying to get a business off the ground, small business, and they don't have a lot of capital, and they want to have some nice packaging. Back in the day, you would hire somebody who was a commercial artist and maybe a graphic designer who was just getting started and hadn't really developed enough of a portfolio yet to charge what he was worth, and you get that guy to do your work for you. Well, and now that's all gone. I mean, because there are a lot of folks out there who maybe have some I don't know, reservations about using AI to replace people, but when it comes time to like do something uh, and pay for something, you can pay someone or you can get free.
Right.
so
Right.
and so that, I think that's going to have an effect in a range of ways. One of the ways I think is Graphic designers, commercial artists, they're like any other professional, you know, um, person who gets better with time and develops his craft or develops his skills. And when you take out sort of that starting layer, or sort of like the bottom layer of the whole sort of enterprise, you're just going to end up with fewer and fewer people that really know how to do it. And so I think over time, we could see the arts suffer. Um, I think there's going to be a countervailing trend. I think that we're going to see more and more premium on the analog. And I think anybody who is really skilled and is able to market themselves amongst people who have the resources to pay for, you know, high quality work performed by a human being, will pay for it. I think that we might even find stuff labeled human created,
Mm.
and people will. It's sort of like the organic food thing. Like when you think about organic food, you're like, okay, I can pay for this tomato or that tomato. I can pay 3 times as much for the organic tomato, and feel good about myself, and so forth. Or I can pay for this Frankenfood over here,
Mm.
that's a third of the price, and a lot of poor people will eat the Frankenfood, but the people who can pay for it will prefer the old fashioned tomato. And I think that's true with the arts. So I think we're going to see a kind of constriction. Fewer and fewer people able to get into the arts to make a living. Now there may be hobbyists. There's always hobbyists, but in terms of making a living, I think that it's going to be challenging in the near term for many people, and I think we're going to see a lot of people kind of losing out, and there'll be some who do real well, and but not very many.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard because there's the optimist in me that I've seen videos of young kids like junior high age, getting into like garage band type stuff again, where they're pulling out amplifiers and
Right.
dad's old drum kit, and they're actually forming a band, which is what I did growing up.
Yeah.
But a lot of that, there's a period, at least as a musician, where it seemed like everyone was moving into just getting rid of their amps and getting into
Right. Right.
plugins, on their DAW, whatever else. But it seems like this young generation is really craving analog, and so the optimist to
Yeah.
me is like, well, I'm hoping that we'll just see kind of a renaissance of that analog. But then the pessimist in me sees the trends of so many jobs are going to be replaced by AI. And I'm sure in your research, you've seen that there are a lot of elites pushing for universal basic income as kind of the
Right.
solution to this, where everyone's going to get a universal income. And that to me makes me think of your description a moment ago of the poor individuals will have to get the Frankenfood, and those who
Right.
have the means can maybe buy the organic. And it feels like if we do get to that scenario where we have universal basic income because AI is doing the majority of jobs, or at least large enough to where there's this underclass on UBI,
Yeah.
it feels like we're almost heading towards that inevitable future where we're
Yeah.
gonna see the class system, I guess, really get exacerbated in a way that we're already seeing those trends, but much more so.
Yeah. I think that's right. I don't know how to prevent that. I think that we'll see two economies. I think that in sort of the early phase of the sort of the rollout and with AI, there'll be a lot of pushback. There'll be kind of a neo-Luddism that is working to sort of slow things down. But some of the stuff that's driving these developments, I don't think really are. Well, they're really beyond even entire communities to deal with. I mean, so um, because of that, I think that there'll be likely a period of genuine, just awful unrest and sort of like the kind of the consequences, the costs of the new technology will be felt by many people. But I think perhaps on the other end of that, we'll see kind of things shaking out into almost like a dual economy. Certain things that are AI, and we're fine with that, with AI taking care of those things, and then kind of the human economy, which is valued precisely because it's human. If you get my drift.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely do. I think that the concern now is just where we are,
Yeah.
as the ground is kind of shaking,
Right.
underneath this. Um, like right now, for example, the state of Tennessee, they're currently talking about multiple different bills on AI, as we're kind of in this new legislative session. One of them, for example, Senator Paul Bailey. He's put forth a bill. Actually, I don't know if he's actually filed the bill yet, but he's talked about it at least in some legislative previews, that would basically require that individuals basically watermark that the video or image that they're seeing is AI. Just to
Yeah.
avoid things like defamation and things like that.
Sure.
Um, so that's one thing that I'm seeing coming out of Tennessee, and another one I saw, HB 849 by Michelle Renault. It's going to exclude AI from being able to be labeled a person in Tennessee state statutes. Um,
Right.
and yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of these bills coming out. Another one is just on AI not being allowed to impersonate mental health professionals. So
Right.
there's a whole bunch of these things being floated around here. So just from your time looking into this subject, do any of those bills sound like good ideas? And is this something that the state should be trying its best to heavily regulate?
Well, I think that they're kind of thumbs in the dike, so to speak. I think there's such a large sort of economic pressure that's behind the trends to automate everything, that um, I my concerns and my questions concerning these attempts to legislate AI um, have to do mainly with whether or not they can actually get done what they hope to get done. I don't know if you put up some kind of, I don't know if it's possible, some kind of firewall around Tennessee, so that let's say chatbot psychiatrists can't get in. you know,
Right,
and how do you do that?
right,
It just seems to me to be uh, something that is at a practical level seems to be just not feasible. I'm not constitutionally against government regulations. We need those for lots of reasons, but um, there, I think, other issues to be concerned about as well. And I had an opportunity to get to meet Peter Thiel here recently, and I was actually at his Antichrist lectures, and I'm as much freaked out and creeped out by him as anybody. But he made some, I think, really worthwhile points, and got me thinking along a line that I hadn't thought prior to my interactions with him. And even though I'm still uncomfortable with him and disagree with him in important ways, one of the things that he's trying to communicate is that our fears of technology might cause us to back into a totalitarian state. And now he uses the language of Antichrist and Armageddon and so forth, and he's really speaking to people who take Scripture seriously. Um, I don't think you need to use those labels to get the message across.
right,
Basically, if people are afraid of losing their jobs, and if people are afraid that they're being tracked all the time, and if people are afraid that they're being deep faked, and you just go on, and they call for the state to just come down with draconian controls, you find yourself in a situation where suddenly the state actually acquires the technology to do the kind of control that we have described in like 1984 and stuff, or in communist China.
right.
So there are some people people who are incredulous, say, well, we already have that, but yes and no. I mean, yes, our government does have an ability to track everything, and it's doing. In fact, this particular conversation is being recorded in Utah. I can assure you of that. I've talked to people at the what's the name of what's the acronym? I can't remember. But anyway, the people who uh, are charged with the task of making certain that our nation is secure are basically record every text, every phone call, every Zoom meeting. It's just all being recorded in a vast center in Utah, and the but there are things that they can't do with what they've recorded or what they have listened in on, and that's the way it is right now. So there are some safeguards and from preventing the kind of draconian or sort of totalitarian measures that we see, say, in communist China. But if people are so worried about AI that they're willing to cede to the government even more control over things than it already has, I'm worried about that. I know that's what Peter Thiel's worried about it, but I share his worry.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. I think I want to talk to you a lot about like how we should respond as far as individuals, as believers, um, as small communities. But one of the theories that I've been just working on, and I guess it's not so much a theory, it's just really what I'm observing is it seems like local is becoming more important than ever.
Yeah,
And a lot of that's because AI is making it to where, it's harder to actually know if that thing that you're hearing about on the news happening in Iran or in Israel or in
right,
Ukraine or whatever. It's harder to know if that's actually legit or if AI has, changed the video or altered the picture or changed the
right.
text, or is AI, it just is the independent reporter that you're listening to, are they AI
Yeah,
themselves?
right. Are
Um,
you AI, Connor?
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know.
Exactly. Exactly. The only way that I'm not AI is just because the fact that you've been on the show back when AI still couldn't get Will Smith eating spaghetti correctly. So that's how you know. But but for real, I think that really does make it to where people are starting to realize like I need to kind of the
Right,
whole trust but verify is becoming much harder to actually do the verifying. So then people are
right,
starting to realize like I need to maybe just focus on things that I can actually verify myself. I can actually go to my city council. I can actually
right,
go to my county commissioners. I can go see my mayor, my sheriff in person. So,
right.
if I'm going to be involved in this political activism, maybe I need to actually control the areas that I can go and physically touch.
No, I think that's exactly right, and I think that's a good development.
Yeah.
So, if we have people who, and I do think that this growing level of, I guess, paranoia is a good thing because it's driving us back to a bias for the analog, and that's actually one of the things I've been writing about a lot. Um, that we really do need to um, im, uh, sort of respond in the way you just described, rather than just hand ourselves over to AI or just to like retreat into our house and not have any interaction with anything. What we need is more human interaction,
Yeah.
physical and in sort of proximity to each other. I think things something like this is great. I enjoy having these sorts of conversations over a long distance, but it's no substitute for sitting down and having a conversation with a person in person.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. And the church, of course, historically has always been focused on community and breaking bread with one another, and really, it's those are kind of the two visions in a way that are being painted: is this fully online digital experience or breaking bread with people face to face?
Right. I think one dimension of this that I think you mentioned early in the show that there's been a real well silence that is puzzling to understand when it comes to Christians and the subject of artificial intelligence. I mean, I agree with you. I'm wondering why am I the only, one of the few people who are working in this area. When it comes to Christians writing about it, I mean, there's like Joe Allen and Dark Aeon, and you got like John Lennox and 2084. But after that, I don't know if there's a book out there that a Christian has written. Well, maybe Paul Kingsnorth's book, Against the Machine. And I've gotten to know Paul a little bit, and I like him. But I'm wondering where the pastors are. I'm afraid that I'm kind of discouraged from what I'm seeing from pastors on the subject. They've more or less kind of like mindlessly bought into it. You've got all kinds of goofy things being done by pastors with artificial intelligence now, and very little, I think, thoughtful engagement with the matter. And so, anyway, it's a bit discouraging to me.
So what are some examples of the goofy things that you're seeing, and what are kind of things that you wish you were seeing from pastors as far as their response?
Well, I think, one goofy example would be as kind of a small language model chat bot where a guy uploads all of his sermons and somebody can like call in and ask him a question. And it's not him. It's just this avatar, this AI generated image of him, giving advice to people based on all the things that he's pumped into this small language model. You get large language models, but you can also create a small language model. And, I guess there's some place for that in the world, but I saw a guy that was charging people like $50 a month to be able to like subscribe to his small language model. I mean, just kind of that kind of thing. If you get my drift, there was something over in Switzerland here not too long ago where they actually created a small language model of Jesus, and people could come and ask for spiritual advice, from this simulated Jesus at a church there. So that's the kind of thing that I think is just goofy. But when it comes to the subject of artificial intelligence, there's a failure to really think about technology theologically. There's a kind of blindness, I think, broadly speaking, within especially the evangelical world, but it's not confined to the evangelical world. I've seen goofy stuff in Catholicism and even Orthodoxy, but it does seem like people just have never given any thought to technology, theologically speaking. And so consequently, they just, get into kind of a goofy first adopter kind of mindset, with the idea that it keeps them, I'm assuming, hip and relevant, and rather than thinking hard about, say, for example, the incarnation, or thinking hard about, say, even scripture. And when we think about, say, the opening chapters of Genesis, how many people have given any thought to the fact that it's the children of Cain who begin this sort of technological process that we celebrate in the world today? And does that imply anything about technology? or let's think about Babel, and what that really was. That was wasn't just, when we think about architecture is a kind of technological project, right? So what was that all about? And so there are insights in scripture that I just don't see people. And it's not like I'm like, I got a corner on the market and this kind of stuff. One of the people that really helped me think about this kind of stuff years ago was Jacques Ellul. Jacques Ellul is a Reformed theologian and a really significant thinker from France. He's no longer with us, but he wrote a book entitled The Technological Society. Really great stuff. I mean, it's right up there with like Marshall McLuhan stuff or Neil Postman stuff. I mean, when I mention those names to folks, most folks are unaware of even who those authors were,
right?
And why they have things to say to Christians. But they do. In fact, Marshall McLuhan was a very devout Catholic. Jacques Ellul was a Reformed thinker, and Neil Postman, Jewish, but very interested in, say, a sort of theological take on things. So I'm exasperated more than anything.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. And when we see these instances, there was one that went viral, a month or two ago of uploading basically your loved one's conscience for after they die. And it's essentially, if we're going to put it in biblical terms, it's necromancy, really.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and that's something that I think that that's going to be a very popular application for AI.
yeah. Didn't we see something along that line after? Oh, I'm just drawing a blank. The guy behind Turning Point USA,
Yeah, Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk. Yeah, why did I draw a blank on his name? But I think I saw something from Texas, mega church, where they had an AI generated
Yeah,
sermon.
yeah,
Uh,
I remember
it,
that.
I mean, what is with that? Um,
And that's horrible. And you know that AI has hours and hours worth of content from Charlie Kirk
sure.
that it could, you know, I'm sure it can replicate something that sounds like Charlie and
Yeah.
everything else. But at the end of the day, we all know that that's not Charlie, and that's why really it's like I said, biblically speaking, theologically speaking, I would say it's necromancy.
Well, and two, yeah, you and I say it's not Charlie, but a wine mom might not.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and I'm using that facetiously, that term facetiously, but there are a lot of very shallow and emotive people out there who, really think that their aunts, maybe their departed loved ones are like inhabiting their dog right now.
Mm, yeah.
So there's this, I don't know, credulity, this ability to kind of believe nutty stuff, and this kind of feeds into it. Now, I'm not saying that if we didn't have AI, though, that would stop, but it certainly exacerbates the problem.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's another tool in the hands of people that, you know, maybe
Right,
shouldn't have it.
right, right. Or
But
take advantage of people.
yeah,
You
yeah.
Yeah,
I know there was a clip recently that went uh, I shouldn't say viral, but it was passed around at least in some right wing circles of uh, Yuval Noah Harari talking about AI and when it gets a hold of the Bible, and you know they're talking. He's
yeah,
talking about how it's just language, so really the AI can get in control of the Bible, or I think he said the Quran and and other religious books. I've got a few of Harari's books on my shelf because he's a figure that's not as well known as he probably should be, given what
yeah.
he represents.
Yeah, it's amazing. He's sold over 35 million books, and like you talk to a typical pastor, and they've never even heard of the guy. It's just so this is the kind of stuff that just startles me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, Harari is he's an atheist. He's a homosexual. He's a guy who's got an agenda. He's kind of in tight with the people of the World Economic Forum. Um, he he's influential, and he's also kind of a creepy transhumanist. So, and just about every transhumanist is creepy, but he's particularly creepy. But I do think that you know because he thinks of human beings as merely animals, and he doesn't really think that there's anything more to us. Basically, consciousness is just epiphenomena, generated by biochemistry. Um, that there's really no difference between, say a human being and any other kind of machine.
Yeah.
Basically, Marvin Minsky, the famous AI developer at MIT, referred to human beings as marvelous meat machines, and this is something that people like Ray Kurzweil and Harari have picked up on, and it really just makes complete sense. If you have a mechanistic worldview, it just follows that human beings are just mechanisms, and that basically consciousness is illusory, and it's really challenging on that basis to create any kind of ethical restraint to keep people who have the ability to hack human beings from hacking human beings. And Harari's famous for saying that human beings are hackable animals.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. His book *Sapiens* is one of the ones that I have, and
Right.
I read the very first chapter, and the very first chapter talks all about how there was once 6 or 8 different types of Homo species, and basically Homo sapiens just happened to be the ones that basically won the evolutionary war, and were the only ones that continued on, and all the other ones died out. And if you actually go back into the back of the book to see his sources that he cited on that whole chapter, there's one source, and it was just from a quote that had nothing to do with his theory. So I mean, it's literally
Yeah.
just "trust me, bro" is
Yeah.
like the actual source behind some of his worldview, and that's unfortunately like when someone like that has such influence with elite circles,
Right.
it's just a dangerous recipe.
Yeah, he's a popularizer, and generally popularizers are disdained by true scholars, but he's still on the same page with many of those scholars when it comes to kind of his convictions about the nature of reality. And because that's the case, because he doesn't really believe that there's an upper story to reality, that he doesn't believe there's a creator, or there's any intelligence behind things. He believes, like many of these people do, that we're actually making God, we're creating God through the development of artificial intelligence, and that we will find ourselves as dependent upon this, silicon deity, as people historically have believed that they were dependent upon the true God, that's revealed in Scripture.
Yeah. This is where the eschatology comes in, because
Yeah.
my premillennial upbringing, I'm immediately, thinking, all right, that sounds like the beast, or something out of
Right.
Revelation,
Right.
being developed. And at the end of the day, I spend almost no time on eschatology. I don't think it's not important, but I do think that it's really easy to get so fixated on staying in one camp. And if you were to force me into a camp, I would probably still say historic premillennialism, and it's mostly because that's the viewpoint that I know the most of. But at the end of the day, this stuff does scream, left behind, sort of,
Right.
really dramatic premillennial ideas springing forth. So, I mean, how has this affected you? I actually don't know if I'm familiar what stance you have on eschatology, but how has this just affected your thinking of end times in general?
Sure. Well, I think that what we see emerging is a alternative eschatology. I do believe that, particularly the transhumanists, um, have a eschatological vision, and they're kind of a prophetic message that they're trying to promote, and that's essentially merger with the machine is the means to immortality. So, and then the world that the machine will be able to manufacture for us will be like heaven on earth. Abundance in ways that we can't even imagine, and even the kind of powers that the scriptures tell us that the elect will enjoy in a new heaven and new earth. So, this is a competing eschatology, and I think it's becoming more and more plausible, and consequently, um, I think we have to address it as competing eschatology. So when it comes to general eschatological themes, I think no matter what camp you find yourself in, there are things we share in common. We do believe in a new heaven and a new earth. We believe in the resurrection of the dead. We've got some disagreements concerning particular features to the timeline, and what we think that those differences mean in terms of our activities in the world. So essentially, post millennialists believe that because we, and I would identify with post millennials, but I would make a qualification as I say that. I would say that I am a post millennialist with a kind of realist outlook. I really am exasperated by the Pollyanna post mill people, and I think that things can get better and get worse at the same time. I know basically the parable of the wheat and the tares, the growing up together, things, basically that line, from Dickens, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I think it was Dickens who said that. You
Yeah.
have an ability to kind of have things getting better and worse at the same time. And I do believe that even though there is a general trend toward a future, that there are recapitulations and cycles within that trend. And
Right.
things can get bad, really, really bad for a while. So, for example, this is one of the illustrations I like to present to my post-mill Pollyanna types. I say to them, do you think that in 1917, if you were in St. Petersburg and the Bolsheviks were about to take over, that you'd have any sense that for the next 70 years it would be hell on earth?
Mm.
do you think you'd have any room in your eschatology for that? Or are you the kind of person that says, no, it has to get better. Every year is better than the last.
Right.
No, I mean, that's stupid. That's not even in touch with reality. It's not even in touch with human nature and history. So, yeah, I think if we're talking about a time horizon, in the thousands of years, a lot of crap can happen before things get better.
Yeah.
So I'm completely open to the prospect that we may be entering into a very dark and extended period of darkness when it comes to kind of what life is like for us. Now, does it mean that it's going to be dark across the boards? Not necessarily. We could have a really pleasant technological kind of environment in which to live, but dark in almost every other way. Yes. I think that's a real possibility.
Hmm. Yeah. So where do you think we go from here, living in 2026, as believers, as people who are involved in sort of the culture war, the political war, whatever you want to say, um, what things should we be doing as individuals as we see the rise of AI? I mean, it's not on the horizon; it's here, but it's accelerating.
Yeah. This take me back to my conversation with Peter Thiel. I was at an event. I was at his Antichrist lectures, and I was asked to be one of the responders to I think it was the second lecture. There were 4 lectures, but anyway, if I remember correctly, so we got into a conversation on the floor, and um, and I brought up Tolkien, and I brought up the Inklings, and he could tell where I was going with it. And he said, "Well, you do know that I named a couple of companies after things in Tolkien, Palantir and Anduril, right? Palantir, the stone that sees from afar, and then you got Anduril, which is the sword of the West." And he said, "I think that, those technologies, and they are technologies, were instrumental in defeating Sauron." And he describes a scene where Aragorn looks into the Palantir and shows Sauron, or Sauron, the sword of the West, and it gets
Right.
into Sauron's head, and it's kind of a psyop, right? So I conceded that. And do you ever have one of those moments where you say to yourself, "Man, why didn't I think of this when I could have said it?"
All the
But
time.
yeah, yeah.
I'll,
But
I'll
after,
have one the moment I end this recording.
anyways, so after our conversation, I thought, you know what? There are other characters in Lord of the Rings that look into the Palantir.
Mm,
There's Saruman.
mhm.
He's captured. He's caught. There's Denethor.
Yep.
He's driven to despair. And
Yep.
then there's Pippin, who sneaks a peek and is just scared out of his wits.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why Aragorn can do what he did is because he's Aragorn.
Right.
In other words,
Right.
there are things that he could do because first of all, he has the right. He is the true heir, and he has authority to exercise, and he knows it, and he uses that authority to take control of the Palantir away from Sauron, right? And then the other thing is that he's got tremendous self-command. Even though he was able to do this, it required every bit of kind of moral strength that he had to accomplish that. And I thought to myself, Teal, do you think you're Aragorn?
Mm.
Maybe you're Saruman. Maybe you're Denethor. Maybe you're Pippin.
Yeah.
And so what it caused me to do is it got me thinking. How do we raise up Aragorns? What do we need to do to give people the wherewithal to be able to rise to the occasion and use these tools well?
Mm.
To me, that's the big challenge because they're not going away. So I think that's what we want to do. And so, anyways, that's what I've been writing about. Been thinking a lot about it and writing about it.
Mm. Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm very excited for your book. There's a long list of books that I have on my list, but I think once yours comes out, it'll definitely jump to the front. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And do you have any idea of a time frame for when that might be coming out?
Well, I like I said, I hope to have it in this month, and then it'll just be a matter of them accepting it and lining things up to get it published. At the very least, it'll take 3 months,
Mhm.
just the internal workings of the publisher to get everything, the proofs and all that kind of stuff, and then get it published.
Awesome. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to it, and I think it's very timely. So I'm very thankful for you and all your work doing the
Well, I hope it's worthwhile. I mean, I can't guarantee anything, but I hope it's helpful.
I'm sure it will be. But yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on. Really appreciate it, Chris. We have great conversations, and always walk away encouraged by that. So I appreciate that. Where can people go to follow you and keep up with everything that you're doing?
Well, I do have a author site, but I almost never do anything with it. It's crwiley.com. But I'm on X and I'm on Facebook like everybody else in the world. So, I throw my 2 cents out there every once in a while to see what people think. And so those are probably of the two. Facebook, I guess, would be the preference. CR Wiley is where I am on. That's the name that's for that Facebook page.
Awesome. Well, definitely be sure to check that out then, listeners. And I appreciate you listeners tuning in. It's always very, I'm just always very thankful for you and your continued viewership and listens and downloads. Be sure to share this far and wide. It does help me out a lot. And of course, you can follow me on X at Forge and A. You can also follow the Forge and Anvil Facebook page as well. And I'll see you all next time. Really appreciate it.